You're listening to Quincast, where we have chats about autoerotica and empowerment through desire.
And we take you behind the scenes with the pros shaping the industry.
Settle in. Things are about to get spicy and uncensored.
As always, big love to our sponsor, Betty, of whatbettymade.com.
She makes amazing stickers. And yes, there's a whole Quincast collection made just for you.
Cute, chaotic, and dangerously easy to justify buying. Check her out at whatbettymade.com. And don't forget to listen out in today's episode for the newest instalment of Peachin It Real.
Peachin It Real with Peaches.
Hello, pretty ladies. Oh, look at you, looking all beautiful. Smile at me. Why aren't you smiling?
I don't want to smile.
Why do I have to smile?
Because you look so pretty, and women always should smile when they get compliments.
Oh, that's right. No, it isn't.
No, it isn't.
Hello, ladies.
Hey, Smudgy.
Hey, Smudgy. Hi, ladies.
That was good. That was good.
really good. I got a little nervous for a second.
Did you? Did I sound manly enough? I don't think I
Yes, you did. The misogyny was oozing from
did.
you.
It was. And
Right from
why
your
did I
pores.
come on like a misogynistic asshole?
Okay, so we've all been there. The comment that makes you uncomfortable, but you laughed off anyway. The dynamic at work that felt off, but you couldn't quite name. The relationship pattern that you kept wondering. Is it me? It's not you.
And today we're going to talk about why. We brought in Lex, an anti-misogyny educator and psychotherapist who went on his own personal journey of recognizing and dismantling his own misogynistic beliefs, who educates men online to unpack their misogyny and challenging stereotypes. He loves all things sports, energetic, and socializing.
Amazing. Great bio.
Cannot wait to talk to him. I have been following him on TikTok for quite some time now. And
Yeah.
he's got his own podcast called Let's Talk that's just coming. Well, he's just done his first season. And his TikToks are, he will put up a screen behind him and on there will be some prompts for a discussion, for some learning opportunities. And there will be like body counts and friend zones and not all men and etc. etc. And he invites men up to discuss it and to say what their views are and see if he can sort of expand the minds.
Oh.
And they're just fascinating. I mean, sometimes it's absolute carnage where men will just be defensive cunts. And then other times it'll be like a miracle. There'll be like this moment where a man will just go, "You're right. I'm really
Wow.
sorry." You know? It's like...
That's brave of him.
That's so, wow, good for him.
Yeah.
And doesn't he start each video with a specific catchphrase?
He does. It's a very British catchphrase, and it is, "Oh dear, where do we begin with this one?" So let's welcome Lex into the Quincast studio.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Lex. I'm
Yes.
Gaza, Jules, and Smudge.
Jules.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So, for anyone who hasn't come across your work before, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Lex. I'm a qualified psychotherapist. That's my job outside of the online work that I do. But online, I do anti-misogyny videos and lives where men can hopefully unpack that. So I try to make them educational. A lot of men, view it as more of a debate because the prompts do say at the bottom, if you disagree, then come up and have a conversation. And the minute the word disagree is there, they think, well, it's a debate. And I try to emphasize misogyny is not a debate, but a lot of the things are rooted in misogynistic beliefs. And that's why those opinions can be quite, I suppose, varying as to how men have come to their conclusions on certain topics. And so for me, it's about getting to the root of understanding how you've come to those conclusions when the majority of the time it's just something you've heard and gone along with as part of conditioning to just say, yeah, this must be it. And then the videos is just kind of similar in terms of finding a lot of red pill content and just highlighting the contradictions, the hypocrisy, and misogyny alongside that kind of a message that I would say appeals to a large majority audience of men, especially young men. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell in regards to what I do online.
So that's where you are now, Lex. So how did you get here?
So I talk about this quite a bit actually. Years ago, I had a close friend who is still a good friend of mine now, who challenged me on a misogynistic viewpoint that I had, by also labeling it what it was, and me having this reaction of what's misogyny? Don't even know what you're talking about. And that was just the opening of the door, really, in terms of how much I didn't know and how deep it was in terms of the viewpoints that I, held on to. And then it was more flooded with me then just, asking continuous questions, trying to understand more. I originally wanted to go onto TikTok to do relationship content, because I was studying to be a relationship counselor as well, and that was kind of what I wanted to go down as a route. But then on my For You page, I was getting a lot of this red pill, videos where I was like, oh, like I find myself finding some of the things they're saying really horrific, but then I agree with a couple of points they've said. So what's that all about? It's a bit, conflicting. And she basically got the brunt of all those videos for me to then say, what's going on here? I don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And then through just going into a lot of women's spaces online and listening to their experiences, listening to, the reasons why, again, some of the viewpoints that men had were, rooted in that misogynistic mindset. I then thought that it, would be quite powerful to be able to do that as a man once I'd learned enough to begin being a man, trying to educate men, because I believe it's a men's issue. It's something that men need to unpack amongst men, and that women shouldn't really be having the emotional labor of kind of educating men to not harm them. That in itself just sounds ridiculous to say out loud.
Yes, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a little bit.
So and she kind of said to me, we live in a world where men respect men more than they do women. Men listen to men more than they do women, and so arguably it could be more powerful. Not that it's a good thing, but just more coming from a man. So this idea of more male allies, I suppose. And I thought I'd give it a go. And I started doing mental health lives in the morning, built up a community. Then I started to drift into the anti-misogyny lives. And it was kind of around the time where there was the man or bear hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when I started. And, I did a live on that topic. And for some reason, the live had about 800 people in there. I had no moderators, and it was an absolute mess.
Oh my God, that must have been
Wow.
chaos.
It was.
Oh my God.
It was an absolute mess. And some people were like, "Do you need a moderator?" And I was like, "What's a moderator?"
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please,
So
please.
and then slowly, a community forms, and you meet some incredible people, and that was just kind of something for me that also a place of belonging online was quite nice as well, because I'd moved home, and you're a bit more away from friends that you meet up with. And it was quite nice then to be able to have this whole, what turned into friendships for a lot, but also just a community of sharing information, sharing resources, statistics, websites.
Oh, so good.
It did feel great to be able to just see how much was going on, to be able to then educate with, if that makes sense. Not how great the amount of misogyny there is, to be clear.
Definitely.
So yeah, that probably wasn't the best wording. I meant it more in the sense of, being able to be part of a community that could actually give you that much more information to work with, to try and then, become someone who is an online presence in that way. So that's pretty much the journey, I suppose, to where I am now.
You kind of intimated to having a couple of misogynistic views yourself. Are you open to telling us what those were?
Yeah, so I was very much of the belief that what a woman wore was for the attention of men at times. So for me, there was that element of thinking, like, if a woman goes out clubbing or something, that the type of dress or outfit she might wear was to maybe get attention from men. And obviously that leads into the victim blaming mentality.
Yeah.
And she gave me this analogy, which has stuck with me till today, where she sort of said, if someone was walking down the street and, someone took a knife out and used it on their neck, you wouldn't say to them, "We should have been wearing a scarf." And for me, that just kind of dropped that penny moment where I was like, oh, wow, that was quite... And it was a bit embarrassing for myself to think, how did I not know this? But that's just how easy it was to just go along with this idea that, yeah, that's what women do, right? They wear clothes for men, that's what they're looking to have a good time, maybe. And then the deep rooted of all other things as well. So that was the kind of thing that was it for me. And then it was more the things of just understanding that, like, when I'm driving, not necessarily now, even though I do catch myself the odd time, the mind, it was like, if something ever happened on the road, it was like, oh, but it's a woman driver. It was like always the typical things of, like, you just say it, don't you? Because that's what you expect, even though statistically it would prove that men have more accidents and take more risks. So yeah, there's lots of individual things that would lead to that kind of mindset of thinking it's okay to just go along with that and say that because it's operating in my male privilege. So yeah, it was quite an opening, let's say, to then go on that journey and explore more. So that's where it started.
Wow, it's a powerful start.
It is a powerful start. Do you, when you catch your brain doing those things, like you just said, like when you're driving, like what is your immediate thought, like right after?
Well, I don't actually do it anymore because when I
Good.
because when I see something happen, I'm just like, oh, I'm more focusing on my feelings of the situation,
Yeah.
right,
Nice.
rather than the
Yes.
deflection of like blame,
that.
like even if it's like, oh, I'd rather just say it was a man, but just more about like, oh, I'm feeling a bit frustrated by that, whatever, it will go away. So I'm not
Mm.
now looking for that. So there was an element of like, am I trying to project onto it being a woman? Am I trying to blame? Which I think that does come a lot with when we talk about men and accountability and,
Yeah.
owning up to certain beliefs or behaviors and recognizing the harm and how much that can minimize the victims or survivors of whatever it is that they face, regardless of what level of misogyny it is. So yeah, it's definitely something that like I don't find myself doing
Mm.
anymore, but
Yeah.
mainly because I couldn't believe that I used to, if that makes sense. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
wow, I used to think that way. That's ridiculous. But
Mm.
it was quite heavily ingrained.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you recall the kind of journey? Because I mean, I imagine it's so ingrained and so habitual that how you were able to shift it. I mean, there had to have been a transition period, like maybe 3 times out of 10 you blamed the woman driver, then 1 time out of 10. Like, how did you make that transition?
I think it's a difficult one with the driving because I don't often come into situations where like enough where someone's done something wrong on the road.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
know what I mean, like it's not that I don't drive a lot, I do, but I don't find often every journey there's someone doing
Yeah.
something where I'm like, ugh. When I hear a lot of the things that men say, I think like there's parts of me where I think to myself, do you know what? Like I know why you're thinking that way because I was there once. I'm
Mm.
not
Yeah.
saying it's acceptable. I'm just saying I know why you're thinking that, and I'm trying to almost like get underneath that layer to sort of say, let's unpack this together. Or, dare I say, almost like holding hands,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
trying to coddle men because I don't think that they should be. But there's I think arguments on both sides for that. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's more just trying to empathize with women's experiences and recognize the impact that men's behaviors have. And I think being a therapist, I do probably have a slight advantage in being able to just sit back and listen
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
demonstrate that understanding and empathy and being curious rather than being defensive.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I've probably had that experience in separating ego
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
reality. And I think a lot of men, from the way they come into my lives especially, let alone women's lives, you can hear what they're ready for. They're
Yeah.
ready for an argument, they're ready to defend themselves and other men, and you're already kind of working at, I suppose if I'm going to parallel that to something else, it's similar to when a client comes to therapy, but they don't want therapy. It's almost like, oh, I've been
Right.
told I have to do this, or I'm
Mm.
here
Yeah.
just because I need to. And it's like,
Ah.
well, we're just not going to do the work because you need to be open to this conversation or to the process. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it becomes quite resistant and difficult.
Yeah.
When you identified those certain, those couple of misogynistic traits, so to speak, that you have, did you pinpoint that they were learned behaviours from very young or from more teenage? How do you think those have developed within you?
Yeah, I think it was probably, again, I will blame it on social conditioning, patriarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that's what's responsible for it because I think you can look at so many different areas in the world where you can find nuances that uphold that mixed with actual statistics. So the things I talk about at times is like sometimes TV shows, Friends in particular, the sitcom or TV
Yeah.
Oh
show
yeah.
Friends.
Oh yes.
One of the prompts I have is about the friend zone not existing. I just think it's this concept made up that men sort of hide behind. And when I talk to them about Ross's character, we start to see the actual behaviors of him in how he, was around Rachel. And it was his
Mm.
character was quite deceptive. It was quite coercive. It was quite selfish. The opposite of being a supportive friend, let's say, because it was all through the things that he wanted that he didn't communicate.
Mm.
And so when
Yeah.
you address the behavior and focus on what he didn't do correctly in that situation, you start to realize it's not actually quite the love story that it's painted out to be. You could then tie that into things that I talk about with regards to children's clothing. So when you
Mhm.
go to the boys section, typically on t-shirts, you'll see things like cars, dinosaurs, monsters. And
Yeah.
on girls' clothes, you'll see things like fairies, bunnies. And you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at predator and prey.
Mm.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it's
Wow.
yeah, so things like that where you don't really think about it until it's pointed out, but you've got dinosaurs. What type of words would you use to describe a dinosaur? Danger, scary, aggressive, big. Whereas
Mm.
with a bunny it would be what? Small, cute, you know and
Yeah.
so we have these
Wow.
associations. I'm just looking at Jules's
Yeah,
reaction.
I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, my brain just like I'm that like mind blown emoji right now.
Yeah.
So there's nuances of it everywhere, and again, I wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't have thought of that if it wasn't pointed
No.
out to me. So all of this education has come from women, because they have experienced this. They know what's going on. They know what's around them. They understand it fully. The difference between it is there will be men that will hear it and just go, whatever. And it's like, yeah, male privilege. You can say whatever and just not think about it. So there's a lot of that. One of the main questions I love asking men in the chat when they come up on the panel, I'll say to them, let's say you're walking into a charity shop with your son and he's like 4 years old or something. And you're saying to him, you can go and buy any toy you want today. You've had a great day. Go and pick something. And he comes back with a doll. What are you going to do? And the amount of men that will say, no, girls play with dolls. Go find something else. I'm just like, so then we start to also take into consideration of, gender roles and how it's like boys do this, girls do that. You get shamed if you do something that girls should do. You get mocked, you get bullied, whatever it is. This is what makes you more of a man. These phrases, man up, boys don't cry. These things still exist today, and they just, they make things worse in a world where I believe is very difficult to live in comparison. I mean, I'm not saying in the past it wasn't difficult to live in those conditions or circumstances, but I think today there's actually just so much more to process. Just technology alone, internet, social media, pressures. There's a lot for people feeling like, how do I fit into this world? So when we look at mental health for men specifically, that's getting worse. Suicide rates are at one of the highest right now. And it's like even patriarchy recognizing that it doesn't benefit men, but men not recognizing that they're in that system in itself. They view it a lot of time more as a gender war versus a system war,
Right. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
But now the narrative is changing for, you're right, men's health is deteriorated and men's unaliving is really high numbers. But now the narrative is that women are at fault for that because we're no longer providing men with that patriarchal platform to be who they need to be. So immediately, again, women are blamed for the actions of men.
Yeah, because women aren't doing what men have always told women to do. Through lack of rights, as in rights being taken away, through I suppose again social conditioning of patriarchy and men's voices carrying more weight, more power, more dominance. And so we're seeing birth rates declining, we're seeing women divorcing more, and we're seeing women not wanting to be in relationships with men as much. And the only thing that really, in my mind, that has changed from all this is when women had to depend on men for finances. They had no choice. It was either they couldn't work, or if they did work, the money went to the husbands. Now we're seeing women work. So I don't need a man for his money. I don't need a man for his quote unquote protection, because arguably it would be better if men just didn't harm rather than, oh, you'd protect me if there was harm. That's hypothetical stuff. Yeah. Right.
It's a novel concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find it so frustrating when I ask men, how are men protectors? Like tell me. And they go, well, if someone breaks into your house. And I'm like, I've lived 36 years. No one's ever broken into my house, touch wood, and I'm grateful.
Right.
Not something happening on a daily basis where men are coming home maybe from work, sitting on the couch watching TV, but continuously looking at the window thinking, is someone going to break in? It's just not
I'm ready.
doing it. I'm ready. So it's not to be disrespectful. It's just more, that's not protection. So if men's traditional gender stereotypical roles has always been a protector and a provider, and they're not really doing those things now, then what do men have to offer that men are also encouraging of men? Where are men saying, listen, work on your emotional intelligence, work on being a good communicator? Those are not things that make you quote unquote masculine. So therefore men don't push that. They don't think that makes you a high value man. But ultimately, if that is what they think is a high value man, that's not what women are after. They're not after that type of a high value man, because they see a high value man as more those things listed: emotional intelligence, communication, and kindness. Those are, I think, one of the top 3 things that have been more desirable for women lately from what I've seen online. Yes, there are going to be women who still want the tradition. That's entirely up to them. Got nothing against that. However, if everybody pushes that narrative, that's how it should be, you're just upholding oppression in what it used to be like, which is men do this and then women, you stick to your role. And there's a lot of women that don't want to be mums, and that's also something that was pushed, right? Is your role is to have children. So when that's changing, men, instead of not like respecting or understanding women's standards, they're saying that they're unreasonable. They're saying that they're too over the top. And it's like, no, it's just because you don't have those things. That's all it is. If you don't have the emotional intelligence and communication that is keeping a conversation stimulated, as far as a lot of women are concerned, I want to be with someone who's present in the relationship.
Yes.
And on an emotional level as well. So yes, a lot of men blaming women and women aren't even blaming men. They're actually, again, blaming patriarchy.
Right.
Right.
Patriarchy arguably is men in terms of the way it's upheld.
Mm-hmm.
So fighting for the same system, but men are viewing it as actually it's man hating, and it's just
Yes.
not that. It's just not that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what's kind of so ironic is like in the space where we all met, right? Because I have a friend of mine who I was telling her about our podcast and the space, and so she listened to a little bit of one of the audios, and she's like, "Oh my God," she's like, "I'm just not going to listen to someone call me a good girl," and like all this kind of. She's like, "This is like," her hackles got up. Her she said, she's like, "I'm just too much of a feminist," and I said, "Well, see, that's the difference here is like in this space, to your point, Lex, the creators, men, women, or otherwise, are incredibly emotional, intelligent, sensitive, caring, compassionate. This is not that world. And so women are drawn to this space, and we hear from women a lot about how they feel healed in this space because they feel really seen for who they are and not objects, right? Because it's a listener, it's an immersive audio. So there's the voice actor, and then the listener is the other character. And so it's a very loving, compassionate type exchange. And so a lot of women could look into this space from afar and go, "Oh my God, look at all these women pandering to the men." And it's like, no, you have no idea. Like they're being treated here in a way that they don't get elsewhere. It's really hard for people to understand that, I think.
All right. I got to go back to I'm bringing the Friends show back around. So I can't stop thinking about it now that you brought it up, is Rachel and Ross's love story was like the biggest love story. No one saw it as coercion or anything. So it wasn't until about, I want to say like 6 or 7 years ago that you started seeing people online saying, this is the show everyone thought was this amazing love story, blah, blah, blah. So I'm wondering, like, when do you think from, 2003 to now, when do you think the narrative did start to change? Because I feel like all of a sudden everyone was talking more about this when, again, in 2003, no one was. Were we just evolving, or is it more social media?
Yeah, I think it's awareness of behaviors. I think it's recognizing actually that certain behaviors that have always been supposedly accepted are actually harmful. And, we have words for that: manipulation, coercion. Not to say that we never used to have those words, but we're now able to identify them more, especially when you see the whole relationship and how it started and continued. So season 1, episode 7, I think Ross was told he's in the friend zone by Chandler and Joey. If we think about his dynamic at that point, he hadn't disclosed his feelings for Rachel. So she didn't know. She could have had an inkling, but he didn't tell her, right?
Yeah.
So he was positioning himself as everyone's friend. So friendship, boundaries of a friendship. And then slowly you start to see that she gets a partner called Paolo. When they're around each other, you can see the jealousy. You can see how uncomfortable he feels. You can then see how uncomfortable the friends around him feel, seeing him not want to see that. Even when Rachel and Paolo are kissing in front of everyone and he's there, like even if it's just a kiss goodbye, I think it was, or something. But just in general, he didn't like it. When they then broke up, Chandler and Joey basically were saying, this is your chance. This is your chance to be the one to go over there and show her that you're the one that she should be with. And so he uses that opportunity as a way to console her, but also in a way of ulterior motive, which is like, I'll go and support you, but deep down, I want something else, don't I? I don't want to be your friend, even though you can be friends. I get it. But those feelings are affecting that dynamic, because if you didn't have those feelings, you'd go and support anyway.
Yes.
Chandler could have gone and supported, but for some reason you do it. Why? Because there's something different going on for you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not really supporting as a genuine, authentic friend, right? So then the friend zone gets positioned as something you can quote unquote get out of, right? Or you can get out of this friend zone into a relationship, right? And the point is, this whole time, Rachel didn't know. As far as Rachel's concerned, you're my friend. That's the boundary. If anything, you're just Monica's brother. Right?
Right.
So when we see relationships now, or should we say not relationship, but dating dynamics, we see in society a lot of time now when two friends are, I don't know, friends for X amount of years, and one of them develops feelings. And let's say it's the man in this situation. He says, look, I have romantic feelings towards you. Do you want to go out on a date? Blah, blah, blah. And she says, no, I'd rather see, like, I think we're just best being friends. And then he'll go, oh, I've been friend zoned. And it's like, no, you haven't been friend zoned. You got rejected. So let's call it what it is.
Right.
For her, the boundaries are the same. I saw you as a friend. I still see you as a friend. So for me, we're friends or nothing. So he's just added this new dynamic of, friend zone, a new dynamic, a new concept, right? Which arguably she's not in him with, because she didn't agree to that or consent to that. So he's just in this thing by himself. And it's like, why are we giving it a word? You got rejected. You now have a choice. Now, the issue that I have with this next part is a lot of men will just go, okay, yeah, that's fine, and accept the friendship. say that a lot of men do this thing, which is loitering with intent, similar to the Ross thing, which is like, I'll accept the friendship, but you know what? Maybe over a period of time, she might change her mind. So
Yep.
I'm gonna be present. I'm still gonna be here because you never know. And if you've constantly got that in your mind, then you're not actually respecting the friendship. You're seeing her as a potential partner, right? So again, as far as she's concerned, and by the way, I don't uphold double standards. If this was the other way around and women did this, I'd say the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
The term is therefore, in my opinion, used to deflect away from the behaviors of what does exist. Right. Manipulation, poor communication, coercion. So when we're direct with the behavior and we focus on what is existing, we can hold people accountable for it. Whereas in the Friends series, no one held him accountable for it. You know, it was encouraged. It was encouraged to say, go on, off you go. Like, now you can, show her. Rather than like, hold a minute, she's just broken up from a relationship. Really? That you want to go in and start having your ulterior motives. You're centering yourself. So yeah, we start to see these dynamics a little bit more for what they are. I actually think the first time I ever heard about the word misogyny was 2.5 Men.
Oh,
okay.
Do you remember that with Charlie Sheen?
Men,
Right.
manly
Now,
men.
That's it. Now, I'll be honest with you. I loved the show. I loved it. Right. And when I look at the ingrained, again, patriarchy, misogyny, I'm watching it thinking lots of money, lots of women, can't complain. Great lifestyle. I wasn't someone I never drank alcohol. So that side of it, I didn't care about. But then if you look at the way that Alan was posed, he was posed as a character that was, stereotypically less masculine. The person that did everything right in terms of had a great job, didn't have things handed to him in terms of that privilege, but, had a divorce situation, stereotypically wasn't the attractive one out of the two in comparison, and therefore then never got the women.
Yeah.
Right.
So what does that push to all the young men and teenagers watching that? They think, well, if you're not good looking and if you do things right, then you don't get anywhere in regards to life. But if you treat women like, objects, and if you have money, you can have whatever you want. So whilst I watch it from a comedy perspective, thinking, oh, some of these things that are done and said are funny, I'm not looking at it from that deep patriarchal perspective and thinking, what message is actually sending out?
Wow.
So,
and Charlie Sheen was definitely method acting then, because that was basically his life.
So that's what I think, until it's put to you, you don't always notice it. You don't. And that's, again, literally the male privilege that just is like a filter. It's just not there.
What was that, Jules? You taught me about some test that they use in the movies.
The Bechdel test.
Yeah, what is that again?
The Bechdel test. So in films, it's to measure if a woman has another conversation with another woman that's not about a man. So if a woman talks to another woman about anything else other than a man, and there's so many TV shows and movies that don't, like Sex and the City, that show, one of my favorite shows ever, that doesn't pass the Bechdel test. They're always talking about men. They're using it now to say, hang on a second, women are more than talking about their guys,
Yeah.
So they're using it in films now to kind of just like make more awareness with that. But yeah, it's called the Bechdel test.
I love the word accountability, Lex. So I kind of would like to take you back in a time machine. So little Lex growing up.
Oh, gosh.
So
Little Lex.
do you remember little Lex? Oh, look at little Lex there, look.
Oh, that's
So
Playing with his cars and his action men and his
all the manly things.
all the manly
Yes,
things.
trucks
G.I.
and his-
Joes.
Yeah. So accountability, I don't know what your family situation was, your father, your brothers, his siblings, uncles, all your male influences.
Yeah.
So when do you think accountability needs to start?
I think it's as soon as you are able to process the things you've done that are right and wrong. Like I've got a 5-year-old. I know you've taken me back to little Lex. I'm an only child, so I don't have siblings.
Okay.
But I did live in I would say it was a privileged household in the sense that we weren't rich, but had everything we needed. Mum and dad both worked. I would say probably times wrapped in cotton wool by mum, and very respectful father, very nice neighborhood, very nice schools. Like it was a great childhood, if I'm being completely honest. So I recognize that. When I look at I'm trying to think of ages because I can't remember too much of my childhood in terms of accountability on that sense. But my son, for example, who's 5, people take the mick out of this when I share it online, but I think it's actually quite important. We were filling up at a petrol station not long ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And this woman got out of the car in front to fill up petrol. And he went, girls can't fill up petrol. And I thought,
Oh.
how interesting. So I looked back at him and went, what made you say that? And he froze, thinking, have I said something wrong? I don't know. And I
Mm.
realized in my head, I thought to myself, wow, that like this is quite powerful, this moment, right? Social
Yeah.
conditioning happening early in real time.
Wow.
So then I thought to myself, before I respond, I'm going to just think about it for a second in terms of, I'll fill up the petrol when it's my turn, go and pay, and then I'll respond when I come back, just because
Yeah.
I want to give myself time to process it. And I recognize, like, I'm the driver of the family. I'm the one that does the school pickups. I'm the one that does the school drop-offs. I'm the one that fills up the petrol and does the food shop. So he
Mm.
comes with me on those things, and he sees daddy do all of those things.
Okay.
And so he sees that mummy doesn't have a car because mummy gets the train to work.
Mm-hmm.
So then I think to myself, I can understand why you'd think that. So is he at fault for saying it? No. But is there an opportunity to, if the word is accountability or more just, teaching, whatever it might be, if I leave that comment for him to think it's okay to hold on to as a belief, then that's arguably me not being held accountable, because I'm the one who can step in to correct that. Similar to when we're at home and mummy joins in to play football. Girls can't play football. Okay, well, let's think about this. I'm always the one playing football. When I watch football, I do watch men's football.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the one that, shows him videos when matches are on when he's asleep, and I show him the highlights. So what's he processing in his mind? He's processing, and mixed with the fact that at school, majority of the time, the boys are playing football.
Yeah.
They will start to shape this reality of, what the world is like for them. And so the accountability, I think, is more at that age. In my opinion, the accountability is on parents.
Yeah.
Which is how are you addressing those conversations to enable them to realize actually that's not the way the world is, even though you might see it that way, it doesn't mean that's how it has to be. As in we know there's women's football, we know that women drive cars. So just because he's not exposed to it, we understand how he got to that conclusion, but then we rectify that, we correct that, and we say, actually. So when majority of families might be reading children's books about whatever stories it might be, the majority of our books are about feelings and talking about being open and honest. We've got like 2 or 3 full set collections of different emotions, because I think it's important for him to understand how to process them as early as possible. Yes, there are your obvious stories of silliness and laughter. But what I love now is when I say, right, I've got 2 boys. So one of them, it's like, your turn today to choose the story. And they go and choose one that's about the feeling. And then at the end, it's like, just ask a couple of questions. Did you feel this today at any point? 1 or 2 questions. And it's just getting him to be in touch with, knowing it's okay to experience them, recognizing what it feels like, what to do when you feel that way. Don't get me wrong, at times they don't, acknowledge it in the moment because they're 5.
Right.
Yes.
We have grown men who can't manage their emotions. So I'm not going to expect it of a 5-year-old.
Yep.
But I will have that conversation because I think it's important. So it's a balance, I think. So I think coming back, to the accountability part, in that sense, I think it is more with the parents in terms of how you handle those situations. I think it'd be a bit unfair for a 5-year-old to need to be accountable for something that they don't quite understand yet. But I know what you mean, that there has to be a point where they start to identify it themselves.
Yes.
And I think that will be through those behaviors at school, in terms of how you maybe talk to other students, how you talk to a teacher, because majority of the time kids are at school more than they are at home.
So how do you navigate the kind of overwhelm of always feeling like you're swimming upstream, Because like you said, you can, teach the kids in your life one way, but then they go someplace else and it's just completely undone. So how do you keep going?
Well, because I think you have to, it's tough, because I think, yes, you're always going to be battling against the social aspects of, whoever is around you that's out of your control. So unfortunately, again, it has to come to the internal, which is, I believe what I'm doing is the best for, our family, for our children. And I'm going to keep sticking to that because I believe that's the right way. And other families are going to say the same, even if it goes against it. So part of that conversation is also reminding them that, other people have different views. So there's an element of, yes, I'm your parent, and yes, there are boundaries that don't get crossed. But at the same time, there's pockets of autonomy that you can give to your children where they feel like they were part of decision making. Even from the very typical, right, we're going out later, there's 3 options, which one do you want to choose? Okay, I want to do that. Perfect. Now we're all in agreement, but we gave you a bit of autonomy to be involved in that conversation. So a little bit to them, but the majority still holds of that power dynamic in you as the authoritative parent. But apply that to your conversations as well, right? So you've got some reading to do, and I can hear that you don't want to do that because for you it's boring. How can we make it exciting? I tell you what, let's see how long it takes you to read these 2 pages, just to see whether or not you can do it in less than, and you can give a ridiculous number. Like if you know they can read it in 2 minutes, you say, let's see if you can do it in less than 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not saying do it every time, because then, yes, I know you're kind of conditioning your children to then do it based on time. But for, a way of encouragement as a one-off, you can do that. A little bit of fun, make it a bit of fun,
Yeah.
and then go back to tomorrow's a new day. Hopefully tomorrow we can do the reading. And yeah, I think it's about being as inclusive as you can, where they don't feel like it's always hearing the word no.
Yeah.
Because, they'll go off to their friends and it's like, oh, it's so unfair. And then suddenly they're listening to what they have. And before you know it, friendships are, colliding together. And it's like, oh, now you've got to battle against what their friends are affirming.
Which is the problem. As you said, going out into the big wide world.
Yeah.
The influence is there. The fear of being the odd one out in a group of lads where, one of them exhibits bad behaviours towards a woman and nobody else says anything. That's another part of accountability. So I assume you do that now, Lex, but how do we get those silent men to start making their friends, their family members, male friends and family members, accountable for the behaviours that they express towards women in public or behind the doors?
It has to be through, again, unfortunately, encouraging conversations in the sense that you are doing this because you care and because you have, the majority of these men will have women in their lives. Is when you make it about their family members, they suddenly get it.
Yep.
Like if it was your sister, if it was your mother, and it's like, oh yeah, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable if they were being catcalled across the street. You're right, I'd feel a certain way. Okay, perfect. So the only reason you feel that way is because you know the person and you have a relation to them. But with the greatest respect, the next woman it happens to, just because you're not related to them, doesn't mean that it's any less of a problem. And there will be men in her lives that will feel the way you do, because she will have family members, she will have loved ones. So men need to try and apply it to a societal level rather than this idea of close proximity. One of the phrases, or should I say talking points, is, I don't know if you've heard it, but it's all men until no men. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
I'm getting it tattooed on my arm.
So I have that on my panel as a prompt a lot of the time. And it's one of the biggest ones that men get triggered by. They think that they've made a point when they go, does that include you, Lex? And I'm like, yeah. It doesn't say all men until no men, except me. I'm the only one. It'd be a bit ridiculous to just say that. I said, of course. And they don't quite understand it unless you personalize it. And so what I try to do is I try to say to them that I'll include myself in these hypotheticals with you so that you don't feel like you're targeted. And that's what I mean about the coddling. It's like, I almost feel like I have to coddle these men when I talk about this. So I put myself in there because I get it, but for some reason they don't. So I'm like, chuck me in the equation. Now let's talk. But the issue that I have is that men also believe in the phrase all men until no men. They just say it differently. And this is the bit that I find quite interesting. So I'll ask men if they think that boyfriends have an issue if their girlfriends wanted to go clubbing without them. And they'd say, yeah. A lot of them will say, yeah. Some will say, no, and that's fine. Some will say, yeah. And I go, why do you think there are men out there that would have an issue? And I'll say, oh, because, they might cheat on me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's an insecurity of your relationship if you feel your partner would cheat on you. What else, though? Because I'm not saying it's not valid. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But what else? Like, is there anything about their safety? And like, oh yeah, a man could follow her, or a man could put something in her drink, or approach her and not leave her alone. And I go, okay, would you feel more comfortable if she said, I'm going to an all-women's club? I'll say, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what's clear is you feel more uncomfortable when men are around. And they're like, yeah. Like, okay, so now we're getting somewhere. So you're not saying every man at that club is going to harm your partner, but you recognize enough men behave in that way that some might. And the point is, you're not going to say, I know which men I feel comfortable about and which men I don't, because you don't know which men are at the club. But that discomfort that you feel is applied to any man in proximity to her, because you know that some of these men or one of these men could do that. And I said, that's exactly how women feel when they say that they're wary and cautious of men. Is you could be the nicest guy in the world. You could be the kindest man in the world. You could even have like a title of that by being awarded it from somewhere. But if you're walking next to a woman on the street and she doesn't know who you are, you're just a man. You know? And you have to recognize that it's not about you personally. So I always say to them, the same for me. If I'm walking past a woman in the street, she doesn't know who I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would I expect her to just automatically feel safe walking past me when I feel safe because, again, of privilege in that situation,
Yep.
because I know I'm not going to do anything, but she doesn't. That's the
Mm.
difference, right? Already, even from the thought
Yeah.
process, I hold the power in that dynamic. So that's one of the biggest things that I talk about is, again, a lot of it is contradictions,
Yep.
hypocrisies, and that's where the explorative topics around that come from as well.
Yeah, I think
Mm.
the conversational part is so big that you say, because even sometimes it's hard for even me. Like an example, this just made me think of it with talking about the bars. Is I a couple years ago was at a bar where they have on the menu those you can order a shot. A woman could order a shot if they feel uncomfortable with a guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. They do that someplace. They usually call them angel shots. So if some guy is following you around or something, you can go up to the bar and say, "Hey, I need an angel shot." And I remember I was just talking with some guy that was at the bar while I was waiting for a drink, and that was on the menu. And he was like, "Oh, like, well, I would never do that." And I almost didn't say anything, but I decided to. And I looked at him, I go, "But how do I know that?" And he was just like, "What?" I was like, "I don't know who you are. How do I know that?" And it was like the only time I'd ever actually spoken up and saw kind of his sort of realization, like,
Mm.
huh,
Yeah.
interesting.
That's it.
But I
Yeah.
almost didn't say anything.
Yeah.
For me then, if a man has explained it that way, or with the here's 10 cookies, chocolate chip, 9 of them have chocolate chips in it,
Yep.
one of them has dog shit chips. Eat the cookies. And they'll go, no, because I don't know which one it is because they all look the same. For me then, if a man has explained that and they still don't get it, I believing that they then feel they are entitled to do what they want with women and there's no changing them. If you have explained something to detail, it's so clear, and then they still don't agree with it and they're actually angrily defensive about it, for me, they are men that will have a tendency or have already done things bad to women.
This is the problem, is that a lot of men do get defensive about it. And I've seen some content creators who have seen that analogy and then they go and do their own video take on it and say, well, you can't really think like that because, you would take each cookie one by one and you would get to know the cookie to see whether it is okay to eat, blah, blah, blah. And I'm
Smell
like,
it.
well, now we're just victim blaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll do that walking down the street dark at night on my own, won't
Right.
I? Yeah.
But arguably also, what men are going to come up to you and go, hey, in 5 years' time, I plan on being abusive.
Right.
Like
That's
men
true.
don't, what I'm saying is men don't show those behaviors from the off if that is what their intention is going to be. And so there's now this victim blaming mindset of women should know. When you're getting to know
Yeah.
someone, you should spot the red flags. You should know how he's going to behave. And it's like, this is the issue, is that the emphasis gets placed on the victim as opposed to who is the one who is causing the harm. That's where, that's where the limelight needs to be shone on, right? Because it just diminishes the survivor's experience of whatever it might be. So yes, I do agree that if men don't quite understand it from that, then I'm wondering what it is they're operating in as a defense mechanism. You'll get a lot of men that will try to deviate to, trying to apply that phrase to other demographics. They'll try and say, well, then you could just say this about this demographic. And they don't realize that any demographic you're trying to apply it to would be inclusive of men. So if you're trying to take out a demographic, you are just being either racist, transphobic, or homophobic if you're focusing on that demographic, because they would also come under men anyway. So now you're trying to exclude a group when men are already the privileged group in comparison to women, the oppressors. Unfortunately, men do reveal themselves a lot when they, talk about these topics and the ways that they try to tackle it.
Can you think of like one or two examples from, I know you have very successful lives on TikTok, and you do this panel. Can you share like one or two examples of conversations you've had with men who came up on the panel and you really felt a shift in them or saw a shift in them?
Yeah, I mean, I had one yesterday, and what I'm trying to do is actually clip some of these to be able to put on my YouTube channel to have those moments. One of them, mainly body count. Body count is the biggest one. So I
Yeah.
do the whole
God.
topic around, you just get the reactions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord.
And so I think like I try to frame it from the perspective of getting them to detach away from the number versus the context. If a woman told you her body count was 30, I always say it doesn't actually tell you anything factual about who they are as a person. Doesn't tell you if they're honest, doesn't tell you if they've got a good sense of humor, doesn't tell you if they're respectful, doesn't tell you if they've got same, goals in the future. So what you're doing is you're taking a number and you're making up stories. You're making up assumptions on what it means.
Yeah.
Oh, if your body count's 30, it must mean this. No, that's what you think it means. And so I always say that actually you're projecting your beliefs onto body count mattering. And the initial part of it is misogyny or insecurities. So men might say, well, if a woman's had, that much sex, then, she's got no self-respect.
Mm.
Or, they try and use the car and mileage analogy. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
God,
Yeah,
yeah.
the lock and key
Ugh.
analogy. And it's like,
Classy, yeah.
well, and it's it. So it's dehumanizing, it's objectifying, and it's degrading. All right. So that's the misogyny. Whereas some men will say, yeah, but she might cheat on you, or she might compare you to other men. She might compare the size of other men to you. And I'm like, okay, well, that's your insecurity. So what I'm saying is the body count is not the issue. It's the way you interpret that number that is the
Yeah.
issue. And where's that coming from? So I do get a lot of men that hear that and think, okay, like I'm starting to see that. And then, yeah, I think there's probably 4 or 5 men that come back all the time after having their perspectives changed and now support the live. It's really nice to see that. And,
Wow.
they're always,
So
yeah,
good.
I'll be honest with you,
That's
that
lovely.
doesn't sound like a lot after a couple of years. But
Something
in
though.
terms of,
Right.
that's right.
Yeah.
But in terms of
Something.
the fact that they come back and stay is what I mean.
Mhm.
Like they
Yes.
are now supporting the live. Some of them also, they've spoken about stories where they talk to their friends at work and how that's, changed perspectives. And I always say to people, you have to recognize, in my opinion, that you don't know who's in the live just watching.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
2 days ago, I think the live was on about 400, people watching.
Mhm.
And I know I get roughly 200 who are, regulars supporting. But when those numbers go up, a lot of men will not want to come up and talk, and a lot of men will not want to type comments. They'll just want to sit and listen and see what's said.
Mm.
And you
Yeah.
just don't know what conversations that sparks off with people in their life, where they go, do you know what? I was on a live the other day. They said this. What do you think? And it's the
Mhm.
conversations that are being had that hopefully make changes. So in immediate view of seeing change, yes, there have been men that have changed perspectives. And even
Mhm.
today, those same men will see new prompts that I put up and they'll go, right, I don't get this one, explain it to me. And I'm like, of course. And then they'll go, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
That's
speak to
so
you later, like,
good.
Yeah.
speak to you later, it's fine now. But they're curious at least, right?
Mhm.
And I think the best feeling that I get from it, without trying to censor myself too much, is when the men say, do you know what? I've watched you for about 3 or 4 months now, and I really hated you when I first watched you, and now I'm starting to get it. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Mm.
I appreciate that, because I'm like, do you know what? I don't care if you like me or not. I'm not there to be liked.
Mhm.
Right.
I'm there to provide the information, education. Yes, some people might not like the way I deliver it, but that's no different to being at school and saying I don't get on with this teacher. I don't
Right.
learn in that
Mhm.
way, and that's fine. I'm not going to
Yeah.
tailor it to every individual that might be needing to hear it differently. I'm going to do it my way, and if it aligns, great. But what I will always say in that space is, please go and spend time in women's lives who are hosting similar prompts or slightly different, and go and look at the way they are treated in comparison.
Mhm.
Because I have a fantastic moderator team. They are receiving death threats, sexually explicit threats in DMs all the time, things that also go way beyond that in terms of affecting real life, situations. And I look at that and think to myself, there's me hosting the live and I don't get any of that. And yet the moderators who are protecting the space, women,
Yeah.
are then on the receiving end. And it's
Of
like,
course. Yeah.
Do you feel that if there's a connection between man's misogyny and his own emotional wounds, rather than a man's misogyny based on just being a dick?
um, own emotional wounds. It's really difficult, because I think that the society that we're being brought up in today, I think, is probably the most awareness being raised on social media for men's behavior, mainly because of the capability that social media has, but also because of how quick stories get to be shared around. So it's always being spoken about. More people are speaking up about it. And I think that, generates a feeling within men when they see all of that, because they sort of, think, oh, I'm just being painted as one of these men and I'd never do something like that. But then they'll switch off from that content and not really engage. It's just like, well, that's horrible, but I move on and carry on. And men get to kind of turn a blind eye to that. And the only thing they need to do really is just talk about how how it bothers them and their image. So again, centering themselves. And it lacks that empathy to be extended to the other side. It's a conversation, but the reason women are talking about this with what I would describe as passion is then also then misconstrued to, oh, she's quite aggressive, or oh, she's quite angry, or like, oh, she's emotional.
Oh, emotional. Got your period, love.
Oh,
my God.
poor baby, so emotional.
Yeah,
Give me a break.
and this is the issue, right? Is again, it's infantilizing, isn't it?
Exactly.
dare I use the word privilege again, but I
Carry
just think
on.
it seems to be a
Yeah.
sense. Well, it seems to
It
be a
fits.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. Look, I would always encourage that. I think it was yourself, Kazza, that mentioned earlier about the group of boys in terms of saying something in your friendship group and being
Yeah.
worried about how you get treated, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is another example, is that men cling on to friendships that don't really benefit them.
Yeah.
I've said a lot of the time that I think a lot of men's, and even teenage boys, but I think a lot of men's friendships are surface level, right? How did you become friends? Oh, gaming, football, sport, maybe going out to the pub and whatever it might be, right? It's all stuff that you enjoy doing, which is
Mm-hmm.
great, but the level of conversation usually sticks on those kind of topics.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what
Yes.
point do you explore emotional concepts in a friendship where you can say, hey, whilst we have all this fun together, are we ever able to be there to support each other on an emotional level?
Mm.
I think that if majority of friendships, I think if men were really feeling something and they know how their friends behave, they don't feel they can go to their friends about it because they'll be ostracized, they'll get bullied, they'll get ridiculed.
Yep.
And then they'll realize
Yes.
actually that their friendships are not as strong as they thought they were.
Mm.
So what do we have? We have friendships where men are suppressing again because they'd rather do that than lose their sense of belonging and community, rather than thinking actually maybe it's not actually as healthy of a friendship as I thought it was.
Wow,
Mm.
that's a really good point about the male friendships, because even like some of my brothers, my husband, they are so surprised when they hear about the level of things that women talk about together. They're like, you told them that? Like you talked about that with them? I'm like, yeah, it's like an everyday text I send.
I'm curious what your take on this, because I know you, like you said before, like the coddling of men, or there might be 4 or 5 instances that you can think of where men were really impacted by your lives, but then the people that they share with is great. I just saw someone post this recently online about how, they don't want to kind of applaud men for speaking up for women because they should have been doing it all along. I won't impart my opinion, but what are your thoughts on that?
It kind of reminds me of the perspective of men being protectors, where it's almost like we're calling, not we, but figuratively speaking, we're calling
Yep.
men protectors on the basis that men are causing harm to begin with.
Mm.
Right. So if men are the perpetrators, are they also the protectors? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So to come back to your point, it's like, yes, are we praising men for speaking up when the only reason they are speaking up is because there's a problem that men created in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I think it's a bare minimum thing, which is like, actually we should all be doing it anyway, but are we at times doing it because we have to? And that's really what's quite sad, is that there is an issue amongst men whereby those behaviors have got to a point where, yes, men are speaking up about it, and then sometimes they do get praised. I sometimes, like, it happens to me, I get really uncomfortable when I'm in the lives and people are saying, oh, Lex, you're doing you're doing God's work, you're doing amazing, and I'm just like, I don't really like that, because for me it's that's not what this is about. It's it's just bare minimum stuff. It's educating men because this is something we have to deal with. That's just me doing my bit because I think that's what we need to do.
We'll be right back to continue our conversation with Lex straight after the next instalment of Peachin It Real.
Peachin' it real, where every topic gets revealed. Pet peeves, hot takes, thoughts combined, opinions served up every time. Peachin' it real with Peaches.
Thank you, Kazza, Jules, and Smudge. This is Peachin It Real, and I'm Peaches. In this segment, I'm going to be talking about men and how men can be better, or should be better, to be honest, because over the last few weeks, over the last few months, over the entirety of our existence on this planet, men have been doing abhorrent things. And I would say it needs to stop, but round every corner, there is something more abhorrent. And it makes me ashamed of my gender. It truly does. Just as I was about to start recording, I was scrolling on Instagram and one of my favorite accounts has come up. It's good for keeping you abreast of news in terms of feminism, My Voice, My Choice org. So if anyone's not following, go and have a look. It'll keep you up to date about what's happening in the world concerning feminine, women's health issues, etc. I've just read that the head of the German criminal investigators, BDK, is telling women not to date men because they are a danger to their safety. So, once again, a man has told women the whole country full of women not to date men because men are dangerous. This is, in my eyes, just the same as someone telling a woman not to wear something because it might attract the attention of men. And the thing is, I am not shocked. That's the really, really sad thing. I am not shocked to see that. It's almost as if we've come to this point where we've exhausted all other options, and now it's falling onto women. It's falling onto a criminal investigation department to tell women to abstain from any kind of direct contact with men because of how dangerous they can be. And when I hear men say it's not all men, it makes me think, prove it. We're not proving it as a gender right now, that we are a safe part of this world. Calling out bad behavior is one thing, and it's important that we continue to do that. And within the AE community, I've been seeing a lot of that recently, and it's so good to see that people are standing up for themselves and giving men that slap on the wrist, right? But a slap on the wrist is not enough to fully educate. Realistically, nothing's going to happen overnight, right? This is going to be an ongoing battle. Just as it took Andy Dufresne years and years to chisel his way through that prison wall to freedom, it is going to take a long, long time to inform. And even through that journey, there are going to be more roadblocks, there are going to be more hurdles to jump over. But the only thing that we can do is try and remain positive and try and inform and try and educate as we go along. For example, I was at my barber's yesterday and the next client came in, and the barber and him, they obviously knew each other quite well, and they started talking. They got onto the subject of their partners, and then within that they were talking about how long it takes for their partners to get ready and how it only takes them about 15 minutes. And I was just listening. I was, they were laughing, that hideous word banter back and forth. I hate that word so much. It's just hideous. So I waited and I waited. And then once they'd kind of, gotten to a point in the conversation where they were both very much in agreement with each other, I just asked my barber the question, so why do you think it takes them so long to get ready? And he said, I don't know, they just want to look good. And I said, so why do you think they want to look good? They said, well, I don't know, they probably, want to look good for me, or they don't want to feel self-conscious when they're in public. And I was like, that's right. That's right. Why do you think they don't want to feel self-conscious in public? And he didn't say anything. And I said, it's because they have such harsh critique from, for the most part, men. So this is a cyclical thing that has happened. This is something that has been evolving for centuries, that women need to make themselves look a certain way in order to be accepted by men, in order to not get looks, in order to feel confident enough just to simply exist in public. And so there was a little bit of a silence after I said that. And then the guy on the sofa said, I'd not thought about it that way. And it's these little moments. Before I asked the guy that question, before I asked my barber those questions, my heart was going and I was fearful of their reactions to that, because I've always been fearful of men myself. I've never really gotten on well in very male environments because I have never really quite understood that kind of side of masculinity before. I've never been a part of a group like that in my life. And doing something like that is terrifying for someone who has never been part of the typical lad culture. That's what we call it in the UK anyway. But it was that little fearful moment, those few seconds, that I doubted whether I wanted to say anything, that was so important, because the reaction that I got was not one that I was expecting. I didn't get that much of a reaction out of the barber. He didn't really say anything, but the guy who was sat on the sofa, it felt like he kind of accepted what I had said. And it's those moments that we need to really look for when we're in friendship groups, when we're out and about. If it's just a stranger's conversation that you're overhearing, that could be a little bit more dangerous because you don't know the people at all. Some people do like to call that out, and that's great. Personally, I think I'd be a bit too fearful of that unless I'm in a group of people. So by yourself, be careful if you're thinking of doing that. But this is just an example of how things could possibly progress. We just need to educate and not simply call out. That being said, please keep calling people out because it is so, so important. But if you can educate along the way, that is even more important. And I'm not saying this to say directly to anyone in particular, because I know that the people who are listening right now are largely women or non-binary people. But you will all know men in your life. So men educating men is what we're looking for, right? This shouldn't fall on anyone else as hard as it should men to educate men. So tell your partners, tell your brother, tell your dad, tell your grandfather, tell your cousins, tell your nephews to educate other men. And if they are the ones in need of education, get someone to kick them up the bum and change their views somehow. Because as we know, the men who are a part of the manosphere or who have been influenced by the manosphere, what they're looking for is strength as a person and guidance, a place in this world. And all that's happened is they've gone looking in the wrong place and they've stumbled into a hideously toxic, misogynistic space that they think is strength, which it obviously isn't to so many people on the outside looking in. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening to another segment of Peachin It Real. This one ran on a little bit longer because, as you could probably tell, I'm quite passionate about this subject. So thank you, Kaza, Jules and Smudge, yet again for indulging me, for allowing me this space. And I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye now.
You can find Peaches on Instagram and TikTok, OnlyFans, and as a voice actor on the Quinn app. He also has an active Discord and Patreon community. All the links can be found in our show notes.
So we recently had the Louis Theroux Manosphere, which I think has thrown up an awful lot of conflict and conversations.
Yep.
How did you feel about that particular show, what it showed and what it represented?
So I was a little bit underwhelmed, but that's because I think I'm aware of all these behaviours. So I believe Myron was one of the people in there.
Yeah.
I've spent 2.5 years stitching his videos. So to see him on it, my profile is literally all about his videos being stitched from his podcast.
Yes.
So when I saw him on there, I was like, I know all this stuff. Like, it doesn't surprise me, it doesn't shock me. But I think it was great how Louis was able to draw out some, again, contradictions and almost make it seem like it's performative. And I don't quite like it being described as that, because I think that, even if it was performative on some level, I do think that they mean what they say. I don't think it's all rage bait. I don't think it's all just clickbait. I think they do believe in what they're saying, because they try to uphold that dynamic as much as possible. There was a part of me that, like, I understood that it was an awareness thing for people to start talking. For me personally, I felt like if there are parents out there who have never really heard about any of this before, I don't know where they're probably thinking, where do I go now? Like, what do I do now in terms of research and what do I do with this information? Because it seems very surface level. Because if you really get into it and explore what's going on, you can see how deep rooted it is. So it's like, is it to have conversations with their children if they've got teenage boys? If so, great. A variety of reasons of why I thought it was good/bad, but only because I just think it was something that I already knew pretty much everything that was said You know, I know the people that were interviewed. I know what they stand for, and there's plenty, unfortunately, there's plenty of videos out there where some of the things they say are just horrific.
Yeah.
So yeah, a mixed view for me, if I'm honest.
It's such a difficult line to walk, right? Because, like, to go back to the kind of like, applauding men for speaking up or whatever, it is the bare minimum. You're right. Like, it's the bare minimum that should be happening. It's not happening. And so part of me feels like, why not encourage the men that do in hopes that other men are like, oh, this is what we should be doing. So I don't know. I think that acknowledging anyone speaking up, man, woman, or otherwise, I just think only encourages more people. But I guess it's how you do it. Like, you don't want to throw a party for them because they said they didn't say something negative about women.
I think doing it based on the fact that they have done the bare minimum, I think I have a problem with patting somebody on the back for doing what they should do as a human being. But I think what does need to be encouraged is for open conversations to have publicly, because when you said, Lex, earlier that this is the time where it's out there now, there's so many more conversations about it, but it's still conversations that are being had by women. There's not a million Lexes out there, but there are 10 million smudges out there having conversations all the time. How do we get to the point where it's not an embarrassment, there's no stigma around it, and they actually want to do it instead of being encouraged by performative pats on the back and well done you, or for influencing purposes? How do we get to that point, Lex?
Well, again, unfortunately, I think it's a generational thing where, the new children that come into, or the teenage era, it starts with parents. I think it starts with parents in the education system. We've got in the UK, anti-misogyny is soon going to be, I think, taught in schools.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best to apply to as many schools as possible because I've got a presentation ready to go, workshops ready, made to be able to do that. But it's so difficult to, every school they see the email, and if I'm honest with you, a lot of admin don't quite want to read that whole, thing. So sometimes it just doesn't get anywhere. So I'm finding that really difficult. I don't know whether or not it hasn't been implemented yet, as opposed to just it's confirmed it will happen. So, but I think that it needs to start in the education system and parenting. And so that's why I think, back to the Louis Theroux thing, I do think it was helpful if it got parents who haven't seen it before aware, because if they're teenage boy, it will open conversations with them to say, have you seen this? And how much do you know about this? And now suddenly it's remember I said earlier about including your children in conversations out of curiosity and not a place of, I'm asserting my authority on you. That's how it needs to be. And I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of parents out there that think this is, all gentle parenting styles, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to fully gentle parent to be able to be, having conversations with your children at times in a gentle parenting style. You can apply both here. And I think that for the sake of how you can have a communicative discussion with your children that is this important, I think you kind of do anything you can to try and make sure that conversation exists, rather than maybe the ego or pride of just, I need to remain in my stance of how I've raised you and never deviate from it. There needs to be some flexibility on that as well.
Wow. You know what I hate that just popped into my head is that Kaz and I live in the US, and
where they teach pro-misogyny.
So when you mentioned the anti-misogyny they're going to be teaching in school, my immediate thought was, that'll never happen there. It's so controversial. People would pull their kids out of school. Just, I hate that that's my first thought. I was like, oh, that'll never happen here right now.
That's sad. I get it. I mean, without going into the politics so much,
even okay.
Well,
I know this is all political anyway. If we're talking about
absolutely.
Yeah. But in regards to who's in charge, I think enough said. And I don't laugh in a way of thinking it's funny. I just mean more. It's just how you ever gonna? That was a huge step back for women.
Huge. That's what's so disheartening. Is like, it felt like we made such amazing progress over decades and decades and decades, and so much of it has been undone in not a very long time, that it's hard to have any, because you just think, even after this administration is gone, hopefully soon, there's a whole lot of people who are trained to be just like them and conditioned. Thought when I was watching the Manosphere, I thought it was going to talk more about the whole kind of online pipeline of how they get like young boys from gaming to the Joe Rogans, or the Andrew Tates. And so I was disappointed in that, because that's what I wanted to hear about, because that's what I feel like a lot of us don't know, what goes on behind the scenes there to train these boys to turn into misogynistic men.
Yeah, and I think they were closer with that on the Netflix show Adolescence, weren't they?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I think I think that was probably more impactful. Yeah. Even though, as always, there was men that was pushing back, of course.
Yep.
But that's never going to be avoided. But I think that was probably more impactful in terms of being able to just see what it was like to get to that stage for him. I would have liked to have seen a follow-up where it was from the victim's point of view, because obviously what happens in a lot of these is that the perpetrator gets centered.
Yes.
And so there's also that to factor in as well. We can all want different things done, in different ways, and that's why I said to you, when I do my lives, there are some people that say, oh, I don't like the way he's doing it, and it might be better if he did it this way, blah blah blah, and there's no one size fits all for this. But what's important is the conversations are being had, and that's the only way that we can raise that awareness and hopefully make it more widespread.
The question I'd like to ask is, what gives you hope when you look at the next generation?
I should really be able to have something to say, shouldn't I? What gives me
Not
hope?
necessarily, if that's the way
reality.
Yeah, I sadly I think I'm struggling with that. I like to think that there are more videos, I do think there's more conversations and videos that are spreading to show just how important and how big this issue is. I think that if the government on our side are starting to implement something, then things are slowly changing. I just don't think it's fast enough. I don't think I'm going to see that much of a change in my lifetime, if I'm being honest. I would like to, but I think you're probably looking at maybe 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
This is all just complete guesswork, by the way. This is no estimate off of statistics or anything. It's just what I'm thinking. I'm looking at the ways that I would like to raise my 2 boys, and what type of surroundings they will have with their friends, and whether or not other families are aligning with that too, and how much is changing. I still think we've got a long way to go, a very long way to go.
Yeah.
And especially with what's happening in America, nothing's going to improve until that's over. And then you never know how, like you said, the people that are then being trained from that to continue however that looks as well. So
yeah,
I would like to see more men taking it more seriously. And I think that they think that trying to take it seriously looks like being this heroic individual. And I think that's the bit that, again, men need to try and realize is it doesn't take long to read some information about statistics and numbers of what is happening out there. There's a couple of obvious websites. I think it's like, UN for women, ONS, Refuge. That there's so many that just pretty much give you the numbers. But a lot of men are very much, I know I'm not doing any of those things, therefore I'm not part of the problem.
Yeah.
And if you're silent and was it silence is violence or something? Is a
Silence is
phrase,
violence.
Yeah.
It's being complicit in areas, and it's also brushing off the behaviors on the rape pyramid at the bottom, the catcalling, the locker room talks, the rape jokes, all of these things that men just kind of go, oh, it's no big deal. And it's like, it actually is a big deal. And because you're not taking it seriously, you think it's okay, but it just upholds the system even more.
It's like not everybody that drinks becomes an alcoholic, but there are people that are alcoholics,
Yeah.
Just exhausting sometimes, isn't it?
It is. And going back to the way things are over here, I think I had a guy say to me once, like, well, Julie, what rights have you lost? You haven't lost any rights. Like, immediately defensive. As I'm trying to say, like, no, here's what's happening in other states. Here's what's going on with women. Why do so many men choose to get defensive instead of reflective when we're talking about our experiences?
Because they look at it from a rights perspective and think that the legal system is the only way in which women face oppression. They don't look at the societal expectations and, the narratives that are pushed onto women through gender roles. They don't look at the ways that women are treated in workplace environments. They don't look at things like pink tax. They don't look at medical misogyny. So they think that if a law is not there to oppress women, it can't be done through any other system. So they don't consider that. I think the most obvious one, which I couldn't believe when I found out, was I think it was either last year or the year before, where women's period pads was tested with actual blood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it's very recent that they just started doing it. They were using water.
Yeah.
Yep. Same on adverts. They wanted to use water on adverts because it might be
that
like
blue
not
liquid,
PG or something,
Yeah.
But then on top of that, there's still chemicals like arsenic in tampons.
In tampons. Yep.
So, and it's like we're in 2026 and these things still haven't been changed, but they're just everyday, healthcare products for the majority of women. Men don't have to worry about that, you know?
Right.
And it feels archaic when you say things like that. That how is it in this day and age in 2026 when we're almost in flying fucking cars that we can't test tampons on real blood? What the fuck? Why can't we? Is it gender pain gap as well? Not the pay gap, the pain.
Yeah. And then when you look at the intersections of that is worse than for black and brown women. Especially when you're talking about pain, So I think black and brown women are 4 times more likely to die during childbirth, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's one of them. their pain often gets dismissed.
Yeah.
For me, when I was understanding misogyny, when intersectionality came my way, I was like, whoa, I'm just trying to get to grips with misogyny first. What's going on? And then I realized
it's
that,
not open those doors. Yeah.
Well, had to though, right? Had
Yeah.
to. That was the issue. Was that when I was talking about misogyny and I was hearing about experiences from other demographics or marginalized communities, I was like, oh, okay, this goes even deeper.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And so the first door had pretty much been open to me, not all the other hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So much of what I hear you saying is that like the kind of solution, if you will, to this ultimately is just clear, honest conversations about the source of the issue and not the symptom. When is it worth? I know it's always worth having the hard conversation, but sometimes you just feel like you're banging your head against a wall. So when is it worth having the conversation, and when is the answer to just walk away?
I think for me, I've started to identify that when some people are there to just debate or there to troll,
Yeah.
in my head, I'm like, I know where this is going.
Yep.
And I preserve energy, and I'll give the same energy back, which for me doesn't take a lot then, because I know what I'm doing now and what my purpose is. But they'll hit a point where I'm slightly stepping into a role of maybe the sarcasm comes out a little bit, because in my head I'm just like, well, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm not going to, treat you seriously on the topic and conversation, because you're not here for the right purpose. But then I think you can always tell when someone is curious. So like, oh, I don't disagree, but I also don't understand. Can you explain? Boom, absolutely. Thank you for being respectful. If you're respecting the platform, you can respect the platform while disagreeing.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. Nothing on my live says men are horrible, I hate men. Nothing on my live says that. But when men come up and say that, all men and no men, they go, oh, you're saying all men are rapists. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know where you read that word that's not there. But you've done a 1 + 1 = 10. And I don't, so you can see the triggers. You can see the triggers that come in, and you're just thinking, where's that come from? Like, arguably, I sort of tap into therapy mode, and I'm like, let's unpack that, because something's going on there, So to make that clear, a lot of people also try to blame mental health on that, and it's so important to acknowledge that misogyny is not a mental health issue; it's a sociological issue. So when there are a lot of men and sometimes women who will say these men need to go to therapy, and I'm like, we need to acknowledge that will not solve misogyny. Going to a therapist, you will not. That's not about reducing your misogyny. That's not what therapy is for. It's a totally different issue. And so whilst I think a lot of men do need to go to therapy for other things, I do think we have to separate the two. Otherwise we cross over, and it for me, that's not where it will solve or change the mindsets of things.
Where do you see yourself and what you're doing on your platform, which is you're doing the work of the Lord?
Of course.
The Lord's work.
Where do you see yourself? What do you see your journey becoming, or what do you want to do?
I'd love to be going into schools. I've worked in schools for about 10 to 15 years, a variety of, secondary, primary. I used to work at sort of children's camps, during the half term, the summer, the Easter. So I've always, worked with children. I haven't done that for about 5 years due to, family dynamics and changes in jobs and stuff. So I want to educate teenagers on that. Not long ago, I had an interview with the Deputy Prime Minister in the UK.
Nice.
I asked the women in the community, what questions do you want to ask? And I, got that put out as well.
Wow.
So I'd like to be, I'd like to be out there more, because I think whilst I'm sitting behind a screen, that's very easy to do, as in it's just turn it on, do the live, turn it off. That is pretty much what it's like, because I don't experience the misogyny. So for me, when men are saying these things, I recognize that actually I can come away from it and just think, all right, on to the next tomorrow. But actually there's a lot of women that have heard the misogyny and gone, wow, that was heavy. So I acknowledge the privilege in that situation. But when it comes to out in the world, I've just finished the first series of the podcast, which has got 12 episodes on it, but I would like to branch into doing series on the podcast. So for example, like I'd like to do a series on racism, a series on DV, a series on mental health, because I think it'd be nice to kind of have a focus on, whether it was with 6 different individuals talking about their experiences of what it might be, to raise more awareness.
Yeah.
So I've got things in mind, but at times it almost feels a bit icky to sort of say I'd like to have a career in unpacking men's misogyny. It's something about that just doesn't feel right. But
there's plenty of misogynists with careers, so why can't you turn the tables and
that's fair enough.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So going into schools I think would be the priority, but I just recognize how difficult that is as well.
Yeah. Well, Clitterson's out there. You've got children, school age. Start writing letters to your schools. and asking for these things to be taught in your schools. Let's start the ball rolling, shall we, and start speaking to the schools and telling them that's what you want for your children.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what? That goes for the US too. All right, everybody listening.
Yeah. What a conversation.
Nice.
Honestly, I could talk forever
Likewise.
about
Appreciate
this.
it.
Yeah, this is so good.
Wow. My brain is like spinning in a good way. In a
I
really,
know.
you know,
I'm like,
just...
Ross and Rachel, you son of a
Yeah,
I know, right? Though I'm still on that. By
like
the way,
childhood's gone.
Yeah, when I go into clothing stores now, that's all I see when I go to the children's section is
Yeah.
those things.
Oh my God,
Yes.
that blew my mind.
So me too, because I was thinking you were going to go in the direction of pink or blue.
Pink or blue,
You know,
yeah.
but then when you said the predator prey thing,
Oh my God.
mind fucking blown with that one.
Yes.
Like, it's so apparent now that you've said it. Like glass
Yeah.
shattered. Like glass
Yeah.
shattered.
Honestly, it's ironic, isn't it? Because I think it was back when it was King Louis who was in when King Louis was there. Pink was actually a boy's color.
It was originally a male color.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how the turns.
And
of
so were
tables.
skirts and tights.
Do we know that way back women couldn't perform on stage, so all the men were wearing all the women's clothing all the time and everything? Like,
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
it goes all the way back.
I mean, things like it was 1970 something, late 70s, maybe early 80s, where women weren't allowed to have a bank account or credit card
Yep.
Yeah.
without a signature from their husband or father. It feels like it should be 300 years ago. It's not.
Well, and here in the States, Smudge, that's exactly where they want to go back to.
Yep.
Like those are current conversations of like in the household, the man should be the only one who votes, and he votes for the house. Like so, they're looking to actually go back there, and they're
Which is why conversations like this need to continue to happen, and we need to get louder. Lex, it's been mind-blowing, eye-opening.
so good though.
It's heavy conversations. It is, but it's part of it, right? Is the more awareness, the more recognition.
It's so necessary. If people can just see those even little things differently, like the clothing and the colors and the and the friend zone thing, like that blew my mind.
Oh my God, me too.
Even when someone says to a guy like, "Oh, you've been friend zoned," somehow that's still the woman's fault. You know, it's like, how dare she not accept your advances?
Yeah.
Well, my family's going to be thrilled that I'll be calling them out on even more stuff, Lex. So thank you.
Love that.
Thank you so much, Lex,
Yeah.
for taking the time to speak
Really?
with
No,
us.
not
We
at
really
all.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Same.
we will
Amazing.
add all of your socials onto our show notes. We
Oh, yeah.
will tell people where they can find you, where they can take part, where they can see you, how they can support you.
Get on the
Um,
lives.
Thank you.
and continue the
Yes.
conversation, because that's what we need to do.
That's
So
what we need.
thank you
so
so much, Lex.
Yeah.
No, thanks for having me on. Lovely to meet you all.
You too.
as
My
well.
pleasure.
Alrighty. Take
Thanks,
care. Bye bye.
Lex. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Lex.
Bye bye.
Oh my God, that was just
Oh my God,
amazing.
I'm so glad that he's in this space doing this. I'm just really glad.
I might
Yeah,
have
me too.
to promote him and as some of my male friends' therapists, I think.
Yeah, right? God, please, anyone, like we said on the episode, anyone who's listening, like bring him into your schools and like any place you can hear him speak, and check out his TikTok and all the social media things that we'll have in the show notes.
Get the word out.
Incredible. He's got an incredible way about him of
Yeah.
dismantling it in a way that is clearly effective. So
God, yeah.
thank you, Lex, so much
Thank you
for
so much, Lex.
spending some time with us.
Keep the conversation going. Keep
Hell yeah, we are.
And thanks again for Peaches and his Peachin It Real segment. What a great segment that was today as well.
Peachin It Real.
We have been blessed today with some fucking amazing conversations, haven't we?
Yes, with a couple good men who
Yes.
are doing great work. So thank you both, Lex and Peaches.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So thanks, Clitisons, for listening to another episode of Quincast. We hope you got a lot out of this and are ready to go continue to fight the good fight. We'll be back again with another great episode. But in the meantime, please comment, share, all the things. Email us your topic ideas, quincastpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And Peach It Real. This has been Kaza. Your voice matters.
This has been Jules. Go put those lips to good use.
And this has been Smudge. Keep wanking.